Shalom, this is your brother Malakia of Yahweh's Messengers. First and foremost, I want to give all honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashim, Rahat, Rakah, Kodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles in Israel who rule and teach well, to the Akims in the highways and hedges that push this gospel in truth and sincerity, and the Akwaf that's listening and learning. To you, I say Shalom. The topic I want to cover today, as you can see on the screen, where is the UK in Bible prophecy? And this is with two Christians, Derek Walker and Ann Dawson. Where is the UK in Bible prophecy? My first scripture will be Ecclesiasticus chapter 39 and 1. But he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High and is occupied in the meditation thereof will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient and be occupied in prophecies. I'm just going to play this YouTube.
Well, a very good evening to you and welcome along to Revelation TV. You're watching Speaker's Corner with myself, Ann Dawson. And for all of you prophecy buffs out there, either seasoned or new to the whole prophecy debate or subject, we really have got something very, very interesting for you this evening. We're going to be asking you, where is the UK in biblical prophecy? You know, do you find it in the Bible? Is it even anywhere in the Bible? And how can you substantiate that? I think it's a fascinating subject, and of course it requires our expert here, and that's Pastor Derek Walker, who is no stranger to the world of prophecy. Great to have you here this evening. This is it's a really, really interesting and very timely topic as well, Derek, isn't it?
That's right. I think it's very pertinent now, particularly with Brexit having happened.
Yes. It's finally happened.
What is the identity? What is the destiny of the United Kingdom?
Well, once we can work out where the UK is, and if it is in the Bible, and you really believe it is quite clearly, and that's what we're going to be talking about. The next question on our lips would be, well, what's going to happen next? What does it say about where we are in biblical prophecy? And this isn't all about guessing dates and guessing times. This is about actually finding where the UK could be in biblical prophecy to see what it says about the unfolding of end time events. Well, as always, it is a live program, so we would love you to text and email. The addresses and the numbers we'll put up on your screen as and how we go along. But just starting off then, let's start off with that question. We'd love to hear from you, by the way, but let's just start off with, well, where do you want to start, Derek? Vast subject. Where is the UK in biblical prophecy?
Well, I think I would like to start with a subject that possibly is well known to people, that what I call the imminent invasion of Israel. That there is this prophecy in Ezekiel 38 and part of Ezekiel 39 that is a very detailed prophecy of what will happen in the latter days when Israel is regathered to the land. And this has not been fulfilled yet, and yet at the same time it's as if all the ducks are lined up for it to happen. And Brexit is one more duck, as it were, that puts it in place. And this battle involves a nation called Tarshish. And it's an interesting issue as to who is this Tarshish. But let me just talk about this invasion first of all. It talks about what I believe is Russia, Iran, Turkey, who are kind of aligned together right now, are going to invade not Israel as such, but the mountains of Israel in the prophecy. And we're going to show a picture in a second now that shows what the mountains of Israel are. It's the biblical heartlands. But these mountains of Israel actually correspond almost precisely to what is known today as the West Bank. And it's really where the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it's also called Judea, Samaria. And these mountains it's described in this prophecy in Ezekiel 38 that these massive invading army go onto the mountains of Israel. Now, it's significant that, and then God intervenes supernaturally and he destroys those invading armies, and this becomes a major divine intervention, and it says God is glorified in the eyes of the nations, and I believe this will spark a tremendous revival across the world, so we need to be ready for that. The interesting thing is that we can put it together with the present politics right now, especially with the Trump peace plan, for example, because the effect of that is, even though it's going to be rejected by the Palestinians, is that it's going to give Israel possibly the right and the courage to annex maybe 30% of the West Bank, as well as the Jordan Valley. Now, when Israel do that, much of the world will be in uproar.
We can just imagine that.
And it's like, if nothing is done, then it's a win, if you like, for America and Israel. And it may be that is the point at which Russia will say, no, we can't let this happen. We are going to invade. And this prophecy says Russia does it for their own reasons, to protect their oil and energy control of the Middle East, because now Israel has actually got a lot of oil and gas that they're now exporting in competition with Russia, and Russia's economy depends on that. So Russia will have economic reasons to do this and to keep her control there in the Middle East. But she will use the excuse, if you like, no, we're just implementing international law. We are making sure the Palestinians have their home there in the West Bank. And so you can see how it's possible that the Trump peace plan might be a trigger for this. I used to think it might be Israel attacking the Iranian nuclear plants.
I think you're alone there. I think a lot of people, prior to recent events, could have imagined that that's how that would have come about.
Something's got to trigger it. And all the invading armies are against Israel, essentially, although Russia's a more subtle one. But Russia it says the hook will be in Russia's jaw, which means she doesn't really want to get involved, but something will happen that will pull her into this conflict. And of course, Iran wants to destroy Israel, and Turkey also. And so all the players line up. But the interesting verse for tonight is Ezekiel 38:13. And here it describes certain nations who actually speak against this invasion. Now, they don't do anything else but speak, I believe, actually, simply because there's no time, because God intervenes himself and deals with the situation. And for God, it's a time to judge those invading armies. But notice these nations, it's an unlikely combination. Sheba, Dedan, and the merchants of Tarshish and all their young lions will say to you, Gog and Magog, have you come to take plunder? Have you gathered your army to take booty, to carry away silver and gold, to take away livestock and goods, to take great plunder? So they raise the objection, and they're basically saying, you're pretending to do this for good reasons, for the Palestinians perhaps, but actually the reason is for your own economic benefit.
We've often looked at that in a kind of negative way.
I used to.
I was brought up thinking it's almost like, we're just keeping our hands clean. We're not getting involved in this.
I think I come to the conclusion that if that was the case, that God was kind of criticizing Tarshish and Sheba, Dedan, then I wouldn't really be worthy of a mention in the Bible. But I think God's mentioning these nations to actually say these are the nations allied with
to
Israel
distinguish them
in this issue. Mm-hmm. And so I see that as a positive now.
Excellent.
And the interesting thing is that Sheba and Dedan, that's essentially Arabia. And merchants of Tarshish, well, one thing we do know about Tarshish, and we'll to discover the identity of Tarshish, there's over 20 references to Tarshish in the Bible, so there's all kinds of clues. And when we put all the clues together, it's a bit like a detective story, where the detective, like Columbo, finds the one explanation that fits everything, And in that way, there is clearly one nation, and only one nation, that fits all the clues.
And even if you're not that into prophecy, or you don't know that much about prophecy, you know, Tarshish, I think we all know from the story of Jonah, so whether you're really kind of lined up with everything else that's going on in end time events, we know that he was called to Nineveh and he went to Tarshish. It's like the complete opposite direction, as far away as he could get. And what we're doing now, what you're going to be doing this evening, is proving to us from scripture and from other areas as well why you believe that Tarshish is actually Britain, because many of you may have well been taught, as I was, that it was Spain.
Yes, it's a funny thing that somewhere back in time somebody decided it was Spain, and it's kind of like unthinkingly everyone then just has carried on that idea.
Yeah.
But there is actually no evidence that it's Spain, and as we're going to see, it contradicts a number of scriptures, but it's one of those myths that's just caught on and it was just transmitted and people just carry it on.
Ran
you know
with
what I
it,
mean?
yeah.
But there isn't actually any solid evidence that it's Spain. Really, the evidence, as I want to say, is Britain. And one of those is right here, because this is a prophecy of the end times. And what we have here is Sheba Dedan, allied, which is Arabia, allied with this Western power called Tarshish. Okay, and what we notice about Tarshish, first of all, the merchants of Tarshish. Now, in fact, on this picture that you're looking at now, we see that actually Tarshish is a Western power. In fact, it's the offspring of Japheth, and in the Table of Nations, and that tells you it's kind of Western Europe type area, and we'll come back to that picture in a minute, but it says that the merchants of Tarshish. So number one, in the end times, Tarshish will be a trading nation. Now Britain, especially from the empire, has always been a trading nation, and I believe since Brexit has happened now, that's going to be a huge boost in trading, but we've always been known for that. So it says the merchants of Tarshish, and it's very interesting, it says, and the young lions. Now of course, Britain is allied with America, with Arabia, which seems an unusual alliance, but because of oil and that is an alliance, so an unlikely one, but it's there. And we do trading with Arabia, obviously. But the interesting thing is it says all their young lions. So this Tarshish is a colonial power that has many young lions. Now it's interesting that Britain also is symbolized by a lion, isn't it? The British Empire was symbolized by a lion, and even that language was used concerning Britain and the Commonwealth nations. In other words, it's got to be a colonial power, and she's got to have lots of young lions. Well, of course, that's true about Britain. We understand that. America, Canada, the Commonwealth, which I believe will become stronger now, they form a group of nations, a strong group of nations. Now, it's very interesting to me that in the end times, Tarshish and her young lions must be a power. Now, if Tarshish was Spain, she does have young lions, but they are like Brazil and, southern. But they're not a power.
No, you wouldn't.
It would be irrelevant.
Exactly.
Forgive me if you're Spanish, but if Spain registered an objection, for two reasons. First, it's not militarily powerful. And secondly, it's not an independent nation, it's part of the EU. So the very fact that Tarshish is mentioned as an independent nation here is actually a prophecy.
Yeah. Very exciting.
Some Bible scholars said Brexit is inevitable. It had to happen because of this prophecy. Tarshish in the end times is an independent nation. It's not part of the European superpower. And so it can't be Spain. It doesn't fit this end time prophecy, you see. It's got to fit all the prophecies,
all those
historical and prophetic, you see. And notice, we have a particularly strong young lion, of course, is America. And so this actually predicts that in the end times, when this invasion happens, Tarshish and her young lions will still be aligned. Okay? Now, it's very interesting that in the two world wars, who was the Allied powers? It was precisely the Tarshish nations. In both cases, God used the Tarshish nations to resist evil that come out of Europe. And now it seems that, again, we've got a case where the Tarshish nations are actually on the side of Israel, and they are, against. We don't know if they do anything, but they are certainly spiritually on the right side. And so, just on this prophecy alone, it's hard to see what Tarshish is apart from the UK. No other nation actually fits that nation. And so they are involved in that. And everything fits. The clues in that verse certainly fit the UK, and they certainly do not fit Spain. But that's only the beginning of it. But if it's the fact that we merit a mention here is encouraging to me. That shows that Tarshish does have an important role. And if Tarshish is the UK, it means that the UK, post-Brexit, has an important role to play as far as God's concerned in the end time events. We have to go to the book of Jonah, because this is to me a clear evidence. It says in Jonah 1:3, that God was telling Jonah to do a difficult assignment, to preach to the Assyrians. And he wasn't afraid for his own life, because they were a pretty violent lot. But he was concerned, actually, that he would be successful.
Yeah, he didn't
and
want
they
them
would
to be
repent,
saved. Yes,
and then God wouldn't judge them.
Yeah.
So he fled in the opposite, to get as far away as possible from the presence of God. He fled to Tarshish. It says, Jonah arose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So there, the presence of the Lord in the temple is. And if we can have that picture again, the third picture actually, he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord. So the idea is he wants to go as far away as possible from Israel. So he paid the fare and he went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So in the third picture here, he is going to Tarshish, and again, he wants to go as far away as possible. Now,
So it's the third picture that you see. This is, if we can put that up, then this will illustrate that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it says that he went, if you notice, it's from Joppa, which is on the far right there of the picture. Joppa, or known as Jaffa, that's where you get the Jaffa oranges. That's the port on the eastern side of the Mediterranean. That's Israel there. And if you were to go as far away as possible from Jaffa, clearly it's to the west. There is no route to the east. So you go to the west, and you go through the Straits of Gibraltar there, the Hercules, yeah, and then you go round to the north up, and you'll just see at the top of the picture is Great Britain. Now that was the furthest point away that they knew. They didn't really know about America there, but that's as far as you could go from Israel.
I'm just wondering whether maybe
west.
one of the reasons why it was Spain is they almost like just did it in a straight line. It's like, how far could you go? And then, okay, well, maybe that was Spain, and that's where, that story came from. Whereas in actual fact, the furthest point would be,
Yes,
almost...
it's not necessarily the furthest west.
No, it's the furthest
It's the
point.
furthest away.
Yeah.
Because that's literally, to them, Tarshish was the ends of the earth. You couldn't go any further, because any further is just the Atlantic Ocean, and that was like a big mystery.
Forget America in those days, yeah.
So in terms of it, you can see why some people might have thought it was Spain.
Yeah.
All right, but actually, we know that the Phoenicians sailed further than Spain. They actually did sail. We have proof of this, that the Phoenicians sailed to the UK, but that's as far as they went. So if Jonah wanted to get
extra biblical support as well.
Oh yes, absolutely.
There's a lot of other information out there.
We'll get to this, because the Tarshish had metals that were very valuable, and that's why they made that effort to get to the UK. So it was literally the furthest point. If you were sailing to the west, that's as far out as you can go. So that is in itself strong evidence that Tarshish is. And another thing is that the Tarshish is described as an island in a number of scriptures. But one thing I just come across today actually was actually something that's in the British Museum, and it's a tablet by the Assyrian king Esarhaddon, who's actually in the Bible, And in the British Museum, there's a quotation from him where he's boasting, of course, about his domination of the world. And he says, all the kings from the lands surrounded by the sea, so these are islands, from Cyprus, he says, and the Ionian Islands, so he's working east to west, Cyprus and the Ionian Islands, as far as Tarshish. So Tarshish is the furthest west, bowed to my feet. So he's describing Tarshish as an island that is to the far west. It can only be the UK. And there are a number of scriptures like Isaiah 69, Psalm 72:10, that talk about Tarshish as an island. Should I read that?
That's what I do want to do, if we can, for just a second.
So if it's an island, it can't be Spain.
It can't be Spain. Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to go to some emails if we can, because we're getting a lot through. And
email section. There we go. That's right. Cut that out.
Future fulfillment. In fact, all of those nations that are described have pretty much come against Israel and actually suffered defeat as a result.
Okay, we've got another one here. I'm not saying a name, but it says the invasion will be more.
Let's move it forwards a bit, because this section
of imminence of the rapture we can't be sure, because the rapture could happen any time. But I think it's quite likely it will happen, as I say before, and I like to say, this is what I'd like to happen, is that as a result of it, there will be a great revival, and it could be the last revival of the church age.
Amazing. Val writes in, when is the rapture? Well, you've just said we don't know exactly, but you know, this ties in with another question.
That event will not all pass away. So what you're talking about there is a human lifespan. If you take the words literally, it doesn't say generation, it says the generation will not pass away.
The generation that sees the rebirth of Israel.
So the outer limit is 120 years, because the biblical full lifespan is 120 years. So it could be up to 120 years, that's the extreme. But I think it will be less than that, you know. So it's certainly within our lifetime, because we're well into, you know.
Well, I mean, and this is great to actually, because, you know, very often, you know, we will be discussing the end times and it's the events, and we'll be talking about the rapture and, you know, is it pre-tribulation, mid or post-trib or whatever. But I think this is slightly different this evening, because we really are taking world events. We're looking at where and if the UK is in prophecy, how all this lines up with what's actually happening in the world today. So, this is a slightly different slant on where we normally go in our chats with end time prophecy. So, I mean, I will read the rest out as and when we go, but do keep your texts and emails coming through. We will periodically be putting those details up along your screens so that you can do so, because it's very much live and interactive here. So, right, okay. So where are we up to now, Derek?
I think one of the important pieces of evidence is to do with tin. When Ezekiel wrote, it was the Bronze Age, and bronze is a particular metal that was used a lot. And the thing is, it needed 10% of it is iron. 10% is copper, which they had plenty of, but 10% is tin. Now, tin was a very rare mineral. Metal. And in fact, the major source for tin in the ancient world, and there's a lot of evidence for this, was Cornwall, in the UK. In fact, we were known as the Tin Islands. And there's a number of sources which we won't go into.
So you just mentioned Cornwall in the UK, where there was tin mines, ancient tin mines, and also was known as the Tin Isles. So I'm just gonna go to my which this is a map I have, the heritage of the Anglo-Saxon race, which is the heritage of the angelic sons of Isaac race. You see all the 12 tribes coming down from the tribe of Judah, Zerah, Perez. These are all the royal that's been in history throughout Europe. So now this is a more modern map that I have. I was able to buy an older version which has got more information on it, and this older version has got a map of England, an ancient map of England. And when we see this map here, we see Tin Isles, just like the man just said, and that's the bottom part of England, which is near Cornwall, where the tin was mined. And if you also look up here, Isles of Tarshish, Isles of Tarshish, to further prove that England, and here along here, ships of Tarshish, further to prove or further to establish that this is the Tarshish mentioned in the scriptures. So yeah, let's go back to the post.
Talk about, tin. Herodotus, for instance, says that the tin was obtained from the Tin Islands, and all the archaeological things that they've discovered from Israel and from the region, when they've actually done the isotope tests, guess where they find that it came from Cornwall. So it would seem, and from Herodotus it seems it didn't come from Spain, although there did at some point there was tin in Spain. But in the time of the ancient world, all the evidence points to the fact that tin came from the UK. That is actually, interestingly, that is the reason why the Phoenicians went to all the trouble to go to the UK to get those metals, especially tin, because you couldn't basically get it easily from anywhere else. That's actually, one theory is that's why the Romans invaded the UK. It's very interesting that the story it was one of the ancient records that the Phoenicians protected the location of the UK very much, because although people knew how to sail around the side of Spain, that final bit of the journey, it was 4 days journey in the open sea to who knows where. But the Phoenicians figured it out, how to do the navigation. And if you read in Ezekiel 27, I think it is, it says all the pilots were from Tyre. They were their own people. And they protected the navigation so that no one else knew how to navigate to Tarshish, because it was a very lucrative market, because tin, that was the one place you could get the tin. And there's even a story once when the Romans tried to follow the boat to find out how to do it, and the Phoenicians, they'd already agreed to do this. They shipwrecked their ship on purpose, and the Romans followed them and got shipwrecked just to keep the secret. And then he was reimbursed. That was so they protected that very much. Eventually the Romans found out, and one theory is that the reason why the Romans were motivated to conquer the UK was to take control of this tin and the other metals. Now, if we go to Ezekiel 27, we get a very important verse. This is like a prophecy against Tyre. Now, Tyre is where the Phoenicians operated out of. And it says, Tyre was your merchant. Tarshish was your merchant, sorry. You traded with Tarshish, in other words, because of your many luxury goods. So they gave luxury goods from the east. But Tarshish gave you silver, iron, tin, and lead for your goods. Now we know that all those metals listed, silver, iron, tin, and lead, came from the UK. Okay, we mined all of that, but especially tin. We were the
Okay, I'm just going to end it there for now. And just go to the map. Here it's this is an extended view of the same map. Sketch map illustrated the migration of the tribes of Israel from the date of their first captivity to Assyria BC 741 to their final assembling in the Isles of the North AD 1066 under the new name as foretold in Isaiah 62 verse 2. These names found on very ancient maps can be verified at the British Museum. All right, so what else am I going to go to now? Yeah, so I'm going to go to a few scriptures now, because when we've established that England is Tarshish of the Bible, it just illuminates the scriptures more powerfully. This is the book of Isaiah chapter 60 verse 9. Surely the isles shall wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish first, to bring thy sons from far, their silver and their gold with them, unto the name of Yahweh thy power, and to the Holy One of Israel, because he hath glorified thee. So, it's as if some of us here in the UK are going to be going back to the Holy Land on ships, and with our reparations, which will be gold and silver, as mentioned here. And there's another scripture, which is Isaiah chapter 66 verse 19. And I will set a sign among them, and I will send those that escape of them unto the nations, to Tarshish, Pul, and Lud, that draw the bow, to Tubal and Javan, to the isles afar off, that have not heard my fame, neither have seen my glory, and they shall declare my glory among the Gentiles. So it's showing you that our people were sent here by Yahweh Bashim Yashai to glorify and tell the Gentiles of Yahweh Bashim Yashai, the fame and the glory. So in covering Tarshish has enabled us to get more understanding of the scriptures and the power, because obviously we've got quite a lot of Israelite brothers and sisters here in England, in the UK. I'm not sure if I've got any more. I think that was yeah, I think that might be it. Yeah. So yeah, all signs are pointing to that the Tarshish mentioned in the scripture is not Spain. Popularly, people believe that it was Spain, but all signs are showing that it's the UK. So with that, I like to give all honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Waha, Rekah, Kodash, Kum Yasha Allah, Amanawala, Shalom.